Today I decided that I wanted to do a thrift flip, and what better timing since everyone has to stay home anyways and I don't have much to do right now. So I thought that I would take a few clothes and change them up a bit. And I wanted to challenge myself a bit using stuff that I already have at home, so I'm not going out obviously to buy any new clothing items or like any supplies like that. So I'm trying to make this thrift flip relatively easy so that anybody can do it. And I'm pretty excited to get into this because I feel like I chose some really fun stuff that are actually things that I'm gonna wear. So I have 3 items that I am going to flip today, and let's get into the first one. So the first thing that we're gonna flip today is this gray cardigan. It is probably like one of the most boring pieces of clothing that I own, which is why it's like perfect to do a thrift flip with. It's just a really simple cardigan I got from Forever 21 literally like so long ago. Like I've had this thing forever. And yeah, I thought it could use a little makeover. I was inspired by this photo that just like randomly popped up as an ad, and I thought that was really cute and like such a simple way to like change up a piece of clothing by adding colorful new buttons. So for this thrift flip, the first thing you're gonna need to do is find some new buttons to put onto your cardigan. Also, I forgot to mention this before, but like I don't expect everybody to have just like a bunch of like random buttons lying around. So I kind of found a solution for anyone who thinks that they don't actually have any extra buttons lying around the house. But little do you know, most button-up t-shirts actually come with extra buttons, like usually sewn into the tag or like on the inside of the shirt. So like for this shirt, for example, this is like the front side and then this is the inside, and they actually sew in an extra button here so that if one of your buttons like falls off, you can sew this one on to replace it. And I don't know about you, but I've never had any buttons fall off of any of my shirts, so I think it's safe to say that you can go ahead and like cut this one off. I just so happen to have a sewing box that has a bunch of buttons in it, so I just started to look through there and tried to find buttons that looked similar to the ones from the photo, and I got pretty lucky and I found a few colors that actually matched really well. So I just started to arrange them onto the cardigan just to see what it would look like. So I ran into a little bit of a predicament. I actually managed to find buttons that were really similar to the colors on the reference photo, but when I arranged them onto the cardigan, I don't think I really liked it as much as I thought I would. It's a little bit too colorful, a little bit too like rainbow for me. And so I decided to like grab some other like more neutral colored buttons, and I arranged those, and I think I like that a lot better. And I think I'm gonna be a lot more likely to actually wear that rather than the rainbow one. So I think that's the one that I'm gonna go for. So next I just took the neutral colored ones and arranged them like I did before, just in like a pattern that I liked and I thought looked good. Next I just started by unbuttoning the shirt to make things a little bit easier, and I started the painstaking task of cutting the buttons off. So I tried a few different techniques here. I started by trying to cut off like where the top of the button is, as you can see, but this didn't really seem to work and it was kind of just like scratching up the button, so I would not recommend this. I eventually went with this technique where I kind of just like pull the button as far away as I can from the fabric and cut the thread off, and that seemed to work pretty well. You just have to be careful not to cut a hole into the actual fabric. As I started to remove each button, I just took a white pencil and marked where the button was, just so I could keep track of where I need to sew the new button on. This part isn't 100% necessary because it's kind of obvious where the button was before, but it kind of makes things a little bit easier. Honestly, cutting the buttons off was the hardest part, and once you get past that, the rest of the flip is honestly really easy. Now that the buttons are off, we can start sewing. I just took some thread and a needle, and I just started sewing the buttons on. I'm not doing anything fancy, I'm just sewing basically in and out of each of the holes until the button is secure. The best thing to do would probably to change your thread on each colored button so that it matches the button, but it's not really a big deal because you're not really going to notice it unless you look really up close. I finished each button off by just tying a couple knots on the end to secure it and then cutting the rest of the thread and continuing with the rest of the buttons. And the trick here is that you really want to find buttons that are similar sizes to the original buttons, otherwise you're going to have a hard time fitting them into the buttonholes. Sewing the buttons on was actually the easiest part of this whole process, and it really doesn't even take that much time. So I finally finished with the last button and did a final knot, and let's see how it looks. So I'm actually so happy how that last thrift flip turned out. So we're gonna move on to the next item, this denim jacket. I wanted to put a patch on the back because, as you can see, there's already quite a few patches on it, and you might be thinking like, okay, that's kind of like a lot already. But I feel like the back of the jacket just feels like kind of empty compared to the rest of it. So I wanted to put a giant patch on the back. And you might be thinking, I don't have any patches like just lying around my house to put on a denim jacket. And I'm gonna show you how to make a patch out of a t-shirt. So if you have like any t-shirts that like maybe you don't really wear anymore, but you still think the design is really cool, this is like a perfect opportunity to repurpose that t-shirt and turn it into a back patch. Okay, so the t-shirt that I picked out is this old neck deep band t-shirt. And I don't know what the heck happened over here, like if I was wearing some like weird type of deodorant, but like the armpits in this shirt are like completely ruined, so I can't like wear it as a t-shirt anymore. So I thought this was like the perfect shirt to transform into a patch. And I already went ahead and like cut the part that I want out, and it's just like this piece right here, which is this like really cool snake, like double-headed snake pattern, and I think the artwork is like so cool and would be perfect. So the first step for this flip is to line up whichever shirt you choose onto the jacket. I'm just using this one as an example because I already did go ahead and cut out my shirt that I wanted to use, and you just want to smooth out all the edges and line it up. Next, you want to find the edges of the jacket where the fabric is sewn together, and you're just going to take a ruler and find that edge and take a pencil and just draw a line where that edge is. That way when you cut out the fabric, it's going to be really flush with the actual jacket. And then you just want to cut along the edges of the lines that you just drew. Once it's cut out, just safety pin each edge just to hold it in place so it doesn't move around while you're sewing. Once it's secured, you can start just sewing it down. I'm just doing a really simple in and out kind of stitch. This may not be the most secure stitch, but it's really simple and it's going to get the job done. You want to try to keep as close to the edge as possible, just so that the edges don't start to lift and that it stays in place. In this close-up, you kind of get a better idea of what kind of stitch I'm doing. So I'm just going from under the fabric up and then back down into the fabric. The shorter and closer that your stitches are together, the more secure it's going to stay onto the jacket. This part kind of takes a while and can get a little bit boring, but in the end I feel like it's all worth it because the jacket ends up looking pretty cool. So the final thrift flip for this video are these pair of black low top Converse. And I actually got these shoes like a long time ago, but like just, I don't know why, I just like never really wear them. And I think it's just because I always reach for like my Vans or like that kind of sneaker. So I thought maybe if I like revamp these a little bit, that I will be more likely to wear them. And I thought like a pretty simple way to like spice up these shoes would be to embroider them. And there's a lot of different types of embroidery designs that you can do, and I've kind of been like researching different ones on Pinterest. And specifically I'm like looking for designs that work well with like black colored shoes. And I'm noticing there's a lot of like space ones, which are really cute, and like floral ones, which I think those are kind of the two designs that I'm kind of leaning towards. And I also have to keep in mind that these are low top Converse, so I can't like do anything that like goes too high. So I'm just looking on Pinterest, and I'm thinking of like combining a couple of things that I see here. For example, I really like the style of this one because of the way it like goes down the shoe, and I think that would like look really nice for this like low top Converse. But I also really like the simplicity of like these vines, and I think what I'm going to start off doing is just do vines in that same pattern here, and then see how that looks, and then maybe add flowers after if I think it needs like a little something more. I started off by just pulling up the reference photos that I liked, and just kind of drawing up a sketch on paper before I put it onto the actual shoe. This can help you brainstorm and kind of just like come up with the final design that you really like. Next, I took that same white pencil that I used before and just started drawing the design out onto the shoe. I wouldn't really recommend this. I kind of just like took it off anyway. I took out all the green thread I had and just kind of put it up to the shoe to see what I liked the best. I ended up going with this green light to dark ombre sort of thread. With normal embroidery thread, you're supposed to be able to separate each strand into 6 separate strands, but I got this floss from the dollar store, and when I tried to separate it, it just kind of broke off. So I wouldn't really recommend using the dollar store one, but it still ended up working. I just had to use the full thread. And once I finally threaded it through the needle, I just kind of closed it off by putting the needle through the thread and pulling it down. As you can see, this just secures it in place so that it doesn't pull back through the needle. Next, I just took off the shoelaces because I knew it would just make it a lot easier, and I started to embroider. The first part just took a really long time because I didn't realize I was actually embroidering through the rubber that helps form the shoe at the end there, and so that took a little bit of time, but once I got past that, it was fine. I kind of was using that piece of fabric to grip the needle because it was hard to push through the thick canvas of the shoe. I also used a thimble because, like I said before, because the fabric is so thick, it was just easier to push through with a thimble. And as you probably noticed from this clip, I did make a little mistake, and we're gonna kind of figure that out later. You can start to see the ombre really come out, and I really liked how this ended up looking. I wasn't sure about it when I picked out the thread, but I'm really glad I went with this color. I almost regret not doing some sort of like flame pattern because I think that would look so cool on these against the black of the shoe, but I think this still looks really cool as well. So I decided that honestly the easiest way to fix this mistake would just be to color it in with a Sharpie, so that's exactly what I did. Instead of like cutting it out and like trying to fix it, this was just like way easier, and I think it looks fine. So I liked how it looked going down the shoe so much that I decided to do it around the label of the shoe as well. I think this just added a little extra detail to make it look more put together. This honestly took a really long time, especially because I had to do it on each side of the shoe and then repeat it all over again on the other shoe, but I think it was worth it in the end. I think that it looks really cool and it was pretty fun to do. So I'm actually so happy with how all of those turned out. Like, I can't wait to wear every single piece that I made. I think everything was like pretty simple. It just like took a little bit of time, extra time to do. So I feel like anyone is able to do this. And I have a few more ideas for like another thrift flip, so I can't wait to do another one.